Emma, Norman, and Ray are three exceptionally bright orphans who enjoy a structured yet joyful life at Gracefield House alongside 35 other children. During breakfast, we are introduced to Mom, Isabella, who cares for the children with a composed and nurturing demeanor.
Wait.
After the meal, the kids participate in a series of rigorous tests that showcase their intelligence, with Emma, Norman, and Ray achieving flawless scores. Later, the children immerse themselves in a game of tag, sprinting across the vast green fields and weaving through the dense forest encircling Gracefield. Norman vanishes into the woods, eluding everyone until Emma stumbles upon him near the edge of the forest. She finds him staring intently at the unassuming fence that marks the boundary. A conversation ensues about the world beyond, sparking dreams of the day they will finally be adopted and leave Gracefield behind. That very day, one of the younger children, Connie, is selected for adoption. After a day filled with laughter and play, Connie bids an emotional farewell to her Gracefield family before Isabella escorts her away. During cleanup, Emma finds Connie's cherished stuffed animal, Little Bunny. Realizing Connie would never willingly part with it, Emma, accompanied by Norman, rushes to return it to her. They make their way to the gate, where a truck waits in a stone passageway. Assuming Connie will eventually find the bunny if left in the truck, Emma moves to place it inside, only to stumble upon a nightmarish sight. Connie's lifeless body. Before they can react, voices echo from another room, forcing Emma and Norman to duck under the truck in terror. Peering out, they witness grotesque, monstrous figures speaking casually. Overwhelmed with fear, the two struggle to suppress their screams as they listen to the chilling conversation. The monsters discuss how the children are being raised as premium livestock, reserved for the elite among their kind. Suddenly, one of the creatures calls out to Isabella, instructing her to guarantee that the delivery of these prized goods proceeds without any complications. In an instant, Emma and Norman's entire reality crumbles as they uncover the horrifying truth. Gracefield House isn't an orphanage, but a human farm, breeding children to be served as gourmet meals for demons. With their world shattered, they flee the corridor and race back to the house. That night, as they process their discovery, Norman proposes they plan an escape. However, Emma hesitates, unwilling to abandon the other children to such a gruesome fate. Meanwhile, Isabella stumbles upon the stuffed bunny Emma had unknowingly left behind in her panic.
Wake the fuck up!
The next morning, Emma struggles to mask her fear when facing Mama for the first time since their discovery. Sensing the danger, Norman reminds her to act natural, smiling like nothing has changed. While Isabella knows someone was at the gate, she doesn't know who. During playtime, Emma and Norman agree that escaping through the forest is their best option, but upon crossing the fence, they come face to face with an enormous, unbroken concrete wall. Their situation grows even more complicated when a little girl gets lost. With just a glance at her watch, Mama instantly pinpoints the child's location. The terrifying realization dawns. Every child is being tracked by some sort of implanted device. Back at the house, Emma quietly grieves for Connie when Isabella suddenly appears, questioning her somber mood. Before she can slip up, Ray conveniently interrupts by ringing the dinner bell. As Emma and Norman walk away, Isabella pointedly asks if they were at the gate the night before. Plastering on their best innocent smiles, they deny it, knowing full well that she's suspicious. Once alone, the weight of their fear finally crashes down on them. They have to escape. Fast. The plan begins with stashing table linens inside a tree hollow near the wall, which they'll later fashion into rope. With only 2 months before the next shipment, every second counts. But as they return from their reconnaissance, they realize someone has followed them. Fortunately, it's just Ray. When they tell him everything, he doesn't hesitate to believe them, because he knows Norman too well to think he'd ever joke about something like this. Ray agrees to help but takes issue with Emma's idealistic demand that all 37 kids escape together. As if their situation wasn't already dire, Isabella throws a new wrench into their plans, a newly arrived infant named Carol and an adult assistant, Sister Crone. Unbeknownst to Isabella, Crone already has her own agenda. She intends to dethrone Isabella and take control. Meanwhile, Emma, Norman, and Ray focus on finding the tracking devices. When inspecting Carol, Emma discovers a small red bump behind her ear, confirming their suspicions. Unfortunately, removing the devices would likely trigger an alarm, meaning they'll have to work around it. With no other option, they devise a plan to disguise their training as a simple game of tag. Emma begins conditioning the kids physically, while Norman and Ray teach them survival tactics. But their problems don't end there. Sister Crone is already watching them closely, determined to sabotage Isabella and ship Emma and Norman out early, seizing power for herself before they can execute their escape. Norman and Ray start connecting the dots and realize there's a traitor in their midst. Meanwhile, Isabella dangles the ultimate prize in front of Crone, promising her a future as a mama if she cooperates. Predictably, Crone has zero intention of waiting patiently for a promotion, and instead plots to overthrow Isabella herself. Meanwhile, Emma, Norman, and Ray push forward with their escape training, tweaking their strategy. This time, instead of letting everyone fend for themselves, the older kids take charge, leading teams in their disguised game of tag. But the trio remains uneasy. Someone is feeding information to Isabella. Their main suspects? Don and Gilda. Later that evening, they decide to bring Don and Gilda into their circle, though Norman strategically withholds the full horror of the situation. Rather than reveal that Connie and every other adopted child was slaughtered as demon food, he claims they were victims of human trafficking. He knows the truth would be too overwhelming. Don and Gilda, unaware of the deception, agree that escaping is their only option. Ray, however, is not thrilled with Norman's selective honesty. He believes Don and Gilda deserve the full truth, but Norman insists that securing their escape comes first. To confirm his suspicions about the traitor, Norman sets a trap. He gives each of them different hiding spots for their escape rope. That night, as Emma feigns sleep, she watches Gilda quietly slip out of the bedroom. Unbeknownst to Emma, someone discreetly slides a note under Isabella's door, revealing the location of Norman's rope stash under his bed. Meanwhile, Gilda makes her way to Crone's room. From her position just outside the door, Emma listens in, heart pounding. The tension is thick. Evidence swings between Gilda being Crone's informant and her being innocent. But in the end, Gilda does exactly what Emma hoped. She refuses to betray them. The next day, Norman and Ray check the two spots where the ropes were hidden. Norman's stash is gone. Ray immediately points the finger at Don, assuming the worst. But instead of agreeing, Norman takes a step back and looks at the bigger picture.
Actually, it's you who's the traitor, Ray.
Ray was the only one who knew about this particular location. And just like that, Norman sees the truth. The real traitor was Ray all along.
You know about all of this and helped Mom out anyway? Yeah.
Ray doesn't deny it. Instead, he calmly explains that his betrayal was necessary, that he did it to ensure his own survival and, more importantly, to gain Isabella's trust. Rather than lash out, Norman makes an unexpected move. He forgives Ray, under one condition. If Ray has been Isabella's informant, then he can just as easily become Norman's. From this point forward, Ray will act as a double agent. Ray agrees to Norman's terms, but with a condition of his own. Norman must deceive Emma into believing they'll be taking everyone with them. In reality, Ray is convinced that attempting to save all the younger kids will only lead to disaster. He didn't spend years as Isabella's informant just to throw it all away on a reckless, impossible plan. Other than Don and Gilda, the little ones are nothing but dead weight before and after the escape.
Everyone.
Later, Ray meets with Isabella, updating her on the trio's continued use of tag as a cover for training. But rather than focus on them, he subtly shifts her attention towards Sister Crone, painting her as the real threat. Meanwhile, Ray finally comes clean to Emma, admitting he's been working as Mama's informant all along. Don and Gilda start to feel increasingly alienated from the trio's secretive discussions. Sensing something is off, Gilda and Emma begin closely observing Isabella. Their suspicions lead them to the discovery of a hidden room where she appears to conduct some sort of private activity. Don, desperate to learn the truth, is eager to break in, but Ray insists they proceed with caution, a sentiment Norman echoes. What Don doesn't know, however, is that Connie is already dead. Believing she's still out there somewhere, he's driven by a need to rescue her. Unable to sit idly by, he and Gilda sneak into Isabella's quarters. Gilda slides aside a bookshelf, revealing a locked door. But Don isn't the type to take no for an answer. His obsession with uncovering the truth leads him to steal Isabella's key. While Don and Gilda pursue their own investigation, Norman, Ray, and Gilda agree on another crucial objective: gathering intelligence on the outside world. Survival won't just depend on escaping. It will hinge on knowing what awaits them beyond the walls. Their search through the library reveals a promising lead. Within many of the books, they find bookplates bearing the name William Minerva, along with a series of Morse code messages. If they can crack the pattern, Minerva may be trying to secretly pass along information, perhaps even a clue to the existence of other humans resisting the demons. Meanwhile, Don and Gilda push further into Isabella's secret chambers. What they find is nothing short of horrifying. A collection of stuffed animals and toys, each belonging to a child who had supposedly been adopted. The realization hits them hard. Not only was Norman right about the adults being the enemy, but the truth is likely far worse than they ever imagined. When confronted, Norman and Ray reprimand Don and Gilda for their recklessness. But at this point, the damage is done. Don and Gilda know they've been lied to, and they demand the full truth. At last, Norman tells them everything. As expected, the revelation is a crushing blow.
Seriously? Wait, Don, stop!
I really am weak. Damn it!
Despite their shock, they begin helping in subtle ways, stealing key supplies that Ray, in turn, reports to Isabella, using them to feed false information. But their efforts take an even darker turn when Norman unveils his next move, a plan to kill Isabella. Norman reveals to Emma that Ray has been feeding Isabella false intelligence, ensuring she stays misdirected or distracted when the time comes for their escape. However, during one of his routine reports, Ray learns something devastating. The next monthly shipment in January isn't just any shipment. He himself is the next in line to be adopted. His time is running out. With only a week remaining before the planned escape, the kids start getting careless. Caught up in their own scheming, they let their guard down, only for Sister Crone to dramatically pop out from behind a tree. Gleefully announcing that she knows everything about their little conspiracy. But to their surprise, she isn't threatening them. Instead,
You want to join forces?